Beast Quest, Book 70, The Darkest Hour, Vigrash, the Clawed Eagle, by Adam Blade, read for you by Brandon Rees-Taylor on the Jesse Millette YouTube channel. Prologue. "Stop squirming now, my lucky lovelies," said Kurt as he staggered along under the weight of a sack full of rats. "Eat the food I've put in there for you. You'll soon be let loose." These were busy times for rat catchers, and Kurt was one of the best. He never used poisons to deal with the swamp rats swarming through the streets of Meaton. He used wicker traps that caught the creatures without harming them. Every morning he would leave the town with a wriggling sack full of rodents and walk to the desolate marshlands where he would set them free. He plodded along the track, his ears full of squealing. "You probably don't know it, my pretties, but strange things are happening in Caonia," he muttered. "It used to take me all morning to walk from Meaton to the marshes, but now it takes no time at all." The marsh seemed to be advancing on the city, as though the whole kingdom was shrinking. Kurt passed the twisted tree that marked the beginning of the marsh. Rustling grass rose up all around him, and the ground became boggy. The smell of rot and decay filled his nostrils, causing him to draw his scarf up over his nose and mouth. These marshes were the spawning ground for the rats, and it was from here that they would stream into the city, terrifying everyone. "And what's the harm if a few of the rats I release into the marsh find their way back into the city?" he muttered gleefully. "I'll just catch them all over again and get twice the bounty." He looked over his shoulder. A thin greenish mist always hung over the marsh, but he could still make out the towers and rooftops of Meaton in the distance. "This will do," he said, gently setting down the sack and untying it. "Off you go, my sweeties." Brown rats and black rats and cream-coloured rats jostled and clambered over one another, squealing merrily as they surged out of the sack and into the marsh. Then, very suddenly, the rats all stopped, their beady eyes gleaming, their whiskers quivering. A moment later, they all took off in the same direction, swarming in a pack, squeaking in fear. The hair on the back of Kurt's neck bristled. The mist swirled around him. He could sense something approaching, something horrible. He picked up his sack and trudged off to high ground, hoping for a clearer view. "Is anyone there?" he called, his voice quavering a little. A dark tide of rats ran past, squealing in terror, their feet pattering, their long tails rustling, bodies bumping as they fled some unseen menace. Kurt tripped over the seething mass of rats and crashed to the ground. As he lay gasping, he saw something looming above him in the mist. A creature hovered over the marsh on gigantic black wings, like some kind of monstrous bird. Trembling with fear, Kurt stared up into its deep black eyes, then at the cruel, curved yellow beak. But it wasn't an ordinary bird, it was something far more dreadful. Its four-legged body and tawny fur was more like a cat's, and its claws looked deadly enough to tear Kurt to shreds. "This is a beast," Kurt thought as he began to crawl away as fast as he could, knowing now what it felt like to scurry for his life like a rat. But when he heard the sharp cry from the creature and felt the draft of its wings, he knew he would never be able to crawl fast enough. Chapter 1. Flight into Peril. "Farewell, and may good luck go with you on your next quest." The words of Daltek, Aduro's apprentice, rang in Tom's ears as he sat astride his horse Storm. Eleanor sat beside him, and Silver the wolf stood close by. Daltek clicked his fingers. At that moment everything changed. Tom lurched in the saddle, staring around as fields, hills, rivers, and the mountains flashed by in a blur. The landscape of Gwildor was flying magically past them. Tom felt a mixture of exhilaration and alarm as a dense forest fled away on either side. "This is a strange way to travel," he said as they whipped through the branches. There was a grin on Eleanor's face. "Daltek has learned a lot from his master," she said. "Think how long it would take us to come so far on foot. were travelling like lightning. They shot out of the forest and sped at a dizzying speed through rugged foothills and over bleak mountain passes. Moving faster than the swiftest arrow, they were whisked down to a rugged shoreline and out over the sea. But Tom's mood had darkened at Eleanor's mention of lightning. It was lightning that had been the cause of their problems. Their wizard friend Aduro had helped them use the lightning path to travel between kingdoms and hunt a powerful, dangerous witch named Kenza. She was using beasts to threaten the peaceful land of Henkrol. Tom had succeeded in destroying Kenza's beasts, but the witch did not wait long to fight back. She had fled to Avantia and broken Sampeo, the pirate king, out of his prison. Together they had escaped in Sampeo's flying ship. As if that wasn't trouble enough, Tom learned that Kenza's magical method of travelling had accidentally released 6 monstrous beasts from their lightning prisons. They were beasts of old, whose evil rage was upsetting the natural balance of the worlds, pushing Avantia, Gwildor, and Chaonia closer together. Travel by the lightning path was forbidden, and Aduro had been put on trial by the Circle of Wizards and stripped of his powers. He now lay in a prison cell, and the judge would only release him if Kenza was brought to justice. Even as Tom brooded over what lay ahead, the wild journey ended with startling suddenness. They found themselves on a wide, well-trodden road that led to the high gates of a walled city. Tom had visited this place many quests ago, when he rescued Queen Romaine from the wasp beast Vespic. This was Meaton, Chaonia's capital city, a bustling place surrounded by fields of waving golden corn. Silver whined, lifting his muzzle and sniffing the air. "Can you smell that terrible stench?" said Tom. Eleanor nodded, wrinkling her nose. "It's awful." Tom turned in the saddle, almost overwhelmed by the foul stink. "Look," he said, pointing to fields where the corn was withering and dying. "Why are the crops rotting?" "The ground is so wet," said Eleanor. Tom could see that she was right. All around them, the earth was unpleasantly dank and slimy. It was almost like a marsh. He peered ahead. What happened there? Close by the city gates, Tom saw that a section of the wall had collapsed. Men and women swarmed among the rubble, struggling to put together wooden scaffolding, presumably to prevent more of the wall from tumbling down. Tom drew a rolled parchment map from Storm's saddlebag. He unrolled it and examined the extraordinary map of the 3 kingdoms. It was like no other map. It floated above the parchment, a tiny but exact replica of the real world. Mountains thrust up, forests rustled, and rivers ran in rippling blue curves. Tom saw the town of Meaton in the centre, the spires of Queen Romaine's castle jutting up like needles. "This is wrong," said Tom. "According to this map, the marshlands should be miles away from Meaton." He looked up again, staring more closely at the city. There were places where the cornfields had been entirely swamped by the creeping marsh. Fingers of slithering green bog were even crawling up to the walls of the city in some places. "It must be the marsh that's weakened the walls," said Eleanor. "This has to be the work of Kenza's beasts," Tom said grimly. "We have to do something before the whole of Meaton sinks into the marsh." He gently nudged Storm's sides with his heels. "Let's go to Queen Romaine. She'll help us track the beast and put this right." Storm moved forwards, lifting his hooves high to get them clear of the clinging mud. But even as they passed through the gates, Tom heard a frantic cry. The oozing ground was giving way beneath a tall, spindly construction of scaffold poles. People scattered as the structure came crashing down. "Help me!" Tom saw a man dangling by his fingers from the top of the wall. He was slipping. Tom let out a gasp of alarm. "If he falls from that height, he'll be killed."